Welcome to session 2 of Holding Hope. In this session, I invite you to start standing, and we'll be moving through a few standing shapes, some heart-opening shapes, as well as a particular grounding breath. So with that, I invite you to find your way onto your mat, onto your feet, and as you come onto your feet, you might begin to notice your stance. And as you notice your stance, you might make any adjustments, maybe kind of shift around a little bit and decide, do you want your feet underneath you, maybe underneath the hips? Maybe the feet are together. Maybe your stance is a little bit wider apart. And it really doesn't matter how you stand. What matters is what feels stable to you in your body. So go ahead and take a moment and find this stance that feels stable to you. And once you have it, once you feel satisfied, you might begin to allow the toes to spread out, maybe even allowing the toes to lift up off of the mat. Stretching out, taking up space here. And you could either have your hands resting down at your sides, or you might even place one hand over your heart and one over your abdomen. Another choice is to place your hands at heart center. So there's no right or wrong. Nothing in this class has a right or wrong attached to it. It is strictly what feels welcome to your body. So as we move through this class, I will remind you again, but just a gentle invitation that everything in this class is an invitation, and you can accept or decline any invitation at any time. So with that, I invite you to leave the eyes open for a moment. And maybe even allow your eyes to roam through the space that you're in. Allowing your gaze to travel. Simply noticing where you are. You could look to the left and the right. You could even look behind you. Looking up and down, looking at where your feet are connected to the floor. And then if you would like, you could take the eyes closed. And if you prefer to leave the eyes open, you might even stare down the bridge of your nose, softening the gaze. Perhaps allowing your eyes to rest on an unmoving spot. And if you do take the eyes closed or leave them opened, there is no matter. It is no matter. And you can begin to shift your focus into your sense of sound. Beginning to notice any sounds, perhaps even outside of the space that you're in, kind of reaching with your ears, so to speak. Noticing any sounds outside of the space you're in. And then perhaps allowing your sense of sound to grow closer toward you or come closer toward you. Perhaps noticing any sounds inside of the room that you're in or inside of the space that you're in. Growing even closer still. Perhaps even noticing the sound of your own breath. Can you hear the sound of your own inhale? And maybe exhaling out of the mouth if you'd like. Shifting to your sense of touch. Perhaps you notice your feet grounded on the floor, connected to what is supporting you. If your hands are together at heart center, you might notice your palms and your fingertips touching. Or perhaps if your hand is on your heart and one hand is on your abdomen, you might even notice the sensation of having your hands rest on your torso. Tuning into this sense of touch, noticing whatever there is to notice here. For one more breath. You might even rub your hands together, feeling any temperature in your palms, feeling the sensation of the hands, creating friction. And then option to bring your hands around you into a hug and just gently squeeze your arms. Maybe breathe in and squeeze and exhale to release. Option to take one more inhale. Gently hug and squeeze yourself in. And exhale to let it go. Maybe even rubbing your arms. Feeling the sensation of touch. And as you're ready, you could release, perhaps taking a few shoulder rolls. Observing how your body feels. Perhaps moving through your neck. Just taking a few exploratory movements to arrive in your body. And now I invite you to find a mountain shape. The Sanskrit word for that is Tadasana. And it's very similar to what we've been doing, but with your feet planted underneath you in a stance that feels stable to you. I welcome you to begin from your feet, lengthening up through your body, allowing the spine to find some length, maybe floating up. Perhaps even allowing the back of your head to float up towards the sky. Here you might even roll your shoulders back and down, allowing the shoulders to just float away from the ears. And as you do that, if you choose to explore that, you might even notice your palms kind of turning outward a little bit. And if so, you might even hold your palms open wherever they naturally fall. And so there's a little bit of engagement that's happening here because we are holding ourselves up. We're rooted to the floor, we're rooted to the earth, and from that place, we are ascending, we are rising, finding some length. You might even allow your head to draw back, allowing the ears to rest over the shoulders. This is our Tadasana, this is mountain shape. And so here, we'll just be here for a few breaths as I offer you our community focus and intention for this class today. There is a short poem by Darby Hudson that reads, "You are a mountain of tiny courages." You are a mountain of tiny courages. So here, as you stand in mountain shape, with your feet rooted, with your spine tall, your chest open, maybe just a little bit more than usual, can you embody the essence of the mountain? as you are a mountain of tiny courages. Perhaps taking a breath in here through the nose. Option to exhale when you're ready. You might work with the community affirmation for today's session, which is, I acknowledge my courage in my healing. So can you acknowledge yourself for just the next 2 breaths, the courage that it took to come to your mat in this moment right now, the courage it takes to keep coming back, the courage it takes to continue your healing, to stay committed, to hold yourself in compassion and softness, and also in discipline. I acknowledge my courage in my healing. And if this affirmation is welcome to you, you might take a breath into it, setting it in your heart, in your body. And when you are ready for movement, I welcome you to the top of your mat. And we'll begin with a few half sun salutations. And so with your next inhale, you might begin to reach your arms up over your head. And as you exhale, you might begin to find a forward fold. And here you have the chance to adjust your stance as needed. Maybe your feet need to go further out or closer together. This is where you can kind of start to adjust. Perhaps you add a micro bend or a deep bend into your knees. And with your next inhale, if you'd like, you could place your hands on your shins and lengthen through the spine to find a halfway lift. Perhaps your gaze is down toward the floor. And you can stay here as long as you like, or when you're ready, you could exhale and release back down into your fold. With your next inhale, or when you're ready, you could bend your knees and rise all the way up to standing, reaching your arms up overhead. An option here to take a lateral stretch. So you could exhale, release one hand down to your side body and reach your top arm over to the side. Inhale back to center in your own timing. And an exhale. Option to explore the other side. Allow your next inhale to bring you back to center. And as you exhale, you might begin to find a forward fold again. And so we'll take that pattern, that rhythm, 2 more full times. However, you can move at your own pace. And so if you move through more or less than that, that's okay too. And if you're ready to inhale and find your halfway lift, I'll meet you there. And an exhale to fold. And an inhale to rise. As you exhale, option to take a lateral side stretch. So you could release one hand down to your side, or you might choose to leave both arms lifted, leaning over to one side of your choice. When you're ready to come back to center, you could use your inhale, perhaps finding the side stretch on your opposite side. Coming up when you're ready. And an exhale, you could find your way back down into your forward fold. Inhale. For your halfway lift, you might place your hands on your shins, or you could always keep your hands connected to the floor or even blocks. If you're ready for the fold, I'll meet you there. And an inhale to rise in your own timing. Perhaps you visit our side stretch here. Option to take it on the other side. And I'll meet you back at standing with our arms reached up overhead. And as you exhale, option to find your forward fold. An inhale for a halfway lift if you'd like to take it. And an exhale to fold right back down. I welcome you to take a pause here. Perhaps you have a micro bend or deep bend in your knees. And here, option to stay in a forward fold a little bit longer, just for another 3 breaths or so. Perhaps allowing your arms to just hang forward, maybe even allowing your neck to give a shake no, and then a nod yes. And then allowing the neck to just grow heavy, the head to grow heavy if it feels supportive to you. And if not, you can leave this shape at any time. Observing on this last breath where you might feel the sensation of this shape in your body. Option to stay here longer, or if you're ready, you could begin to plant your hands on the floor or on your blocks and step 1 foot back and then the other as we find ourselves in a tabletop shape. Here, you might utilize a blanket. Option to place that on your mat so that your knees have a little bit of support. And if one blanket is not enough or a towel, you could always fold it again, or you could just stack another blanket on top. And here in tabletop, you always have the option and the choice to drape a blanket over your hips if that feels safer for you. And as we come into our tabletop, I invite you to send your hips back toward your heels, finding a version of a child shape. Perhaps your hands are reached out ahead of you and maybe your forehead comes to the floor. Or maybe you bring your elbows back and plant your elbows and your palms on the floor. So 2 options here for our next shape. Option 1, if you have your elbows planted on the floor, you might begin to inhale and draw the heart space forward, like you are concaving your upper back. Perhaps your gaze comes forward. And as you exhale, you might begin to curl through the spine, like you're trying to separate the space in between your shoulder blades. You could work with your breath here, inhaling and drawing your heart space forward. And as you exhale, you might curl the spine forward, allowing the space in between your shoulder blades to find some space. Option 2, if your hands are outstretched and your forehead is resting down toward the mat, you might begin to rock. So you could inhale, press up through your quads, through your hips, and round the spine forward, coming into like a tabletop, but this is our cat shape. So our spine is rounding towards the sky. Chin might be tucked in a little bit. And here your core can do a little bit of work so that we're not necessarily tucking our tailbone so much as we are drawing the navel in toward the spine to create the rounding. And as you exhale, you could begin to send yourself back, maybe even keeping your gaze lifted here if you are looking for a stretch through the chest. So option 2, choose which version works for you. You might have the elbows planted on the floor, or you might have your hands outstretched and your arms lengthened. There is no right or wrong. And there is no right way to do it or right pace. You decide. And how do you decide? You decide by feeling. Feeling into your body. Deciding and noticing what feels right. What feels welcome. And as we take our last inhale and exhale here in our cat-cow shape, I invite you to find your way up into a tabletop. If you have your elbows on the floor, you could rock yourself forward and take just a few organic movements. So nothing specific here, unless you want something specific, but simply just kind of feeling into your body for just another 2 exhales. You might even extend one leg back behind you and then the other. Okay. And here, option 2, either find a downward facing dog, or you could walk your hands forward for puppy shape. So I'm going to walk you through puppy shape really quickly. You could find some engagement through your core. Doesn't have to be 100%, could be 50%. This is just to protect the lower back. And with that engagement through your core, you could walk your hands forward and begin to lower the forehead and the chest down toward the mat. The chest doesn't have to touch the mat, and it probably won't, especially with your core engaged. But your forehead might rest on the mat. And so this is our puppy shape. It's a really big chest and shoulder opener. And if you prefer down dog, you could tuck your toes, lift the hips, and send the hips back like you're stretching through your shoulders, maybe even releasing one heel down toward the floor and then the other, kind of like you're riding a bike. And of course, those are 2 options, but the third option is anything else that you would prefer to do here. This is your practice, your body. What do you need? What do you want? All right, last inhale and exhale here wherever you are. And if you are in down dog, I welcome you to bring your knees back to the mat. And if you are in puppy shape, you could begin to shift your hips forward, walk your hands back until you are in a tabletop shape. And here, I invite you to walk your hands forward a little bit more forward, kind of like you're in a modified plank, like your knees are coming to the floor in a plank. And you might even take your hands out a little bit wider. And you could start to lower your hands down. Lower your chest down, lower your body down to the mat. And with your next inhale and your hands planted on the mat, maybe your hands find their way underneath your shoulders or thereabouts. You could begin to inhale, press your hands into the mat, and lift your heart just a little bit for a small cobra. Exhale, and you could find your way back down. An option here to find a rhythm, kind of like a wave rolling in and out as you breathe in. You could lift your heart just a little bit. Maybe you roll your shoulders back, noticing how that feels. You could also exhale and lower back down. As we take a few more breaths here. Creating a rhythm and noticing as you connect this movement to your breath. Observing how it feels to open up through the chest. How it might feel in your back. Last one here. Breathing in and lifting up. And then exhale to lower right back down. Option to release your hands and take a pause, maybe resting your arms in front of you and your forehead on your arms. And just noticing for a moment any sensation you might have in your arms or your shoulders or your chest. Is there perhaps an increase in warmth? Or perhaps a different sensation? And you can stay here as long as you like. Or when you're ready, you could begin to bring your hands out to the left and the right side of you. So here, it's a little bit different. We'll be bringing our fingertips to the floor. This is for dancing cobra. It's a similar shape that we just did, but kind of different. So if you'd like to join, you could position your hands kind of underneath your elbows, and your elbows can kind of lift up towards the ceiling, and with your fingertips tented, you could begin to inhale and press your fingertips into the floor and lift your heart just a little bit, kind of like where you just were. An option to stay here, or you could exhale and dip your left shoulder forward as you look over your right shoulder. Inhale for center. Exhale, option to change sides. So you could draw your right shoulder forward and look over your left shoulder. Finding a little twist here. Option to take it one more time. Inhale for center. You might draw your left shoulder forward and look over your right. Coming back to center, last one, and switching sides if you'd like to. And back to center. Releasing the heart back to the floor, releasing the hands, maybe rolling through the wrists for just a moment. Okay. Option to plant your hands on the floor and begin to press into your hands to lift yourself up. You might decide to just step one foot forward and then the other as we come into a forward fold, or you could find a down dog and then step your feet forward. You choose, but however you get there, I invite you to meet me on your mat in a forward fold. When you're ready, you might begin to inhale for a halfway lift and exhale to fold. You can stay here as long as you like. And when you're ready to meet me in mountain shape and standing, you could breathe in, reach your arms up overhead. Option to exhale and bring your hands to touch at heart center. Pausing in our mountain shape, Tadasana. Noticing how your body feels. Perhaps even bringing to mind the affirmation for this class. I acknowledge my courage in my healing. I acknowledge my courage in my healing. When you're ready to leave this shape, you might begin to clear any blankets off of your mat or towels. As we come to the top of the mat, I invite you to, I'm going to start with my right side. So if you'd like to follow me, you can, but you can choose to step back either foot that you like. So option to step back one foot, I'm gonna step back my right foot, and we're gonna come into a warrior two, or you have the opportunity to. And so in setting this up, if you've never come into a warrior two before, you can send your right foot back, or whichever foot you send back. And your, oops, I almost fell. You can blade your right foot, your back foot, so that your heel can plug into the floor and your toes might even come in at an angle. And here, your left leg, your front leg, can lunge forward. So your left toes might point to the top of your mat, and you can bend into your front knee. Now, option here to kind of check in on your stance. We'll just do this for the first one so you can kind of know your options and feel into it. And here you might notice that when you lunge into your front knee, if you feel like your stance is too long, too wide, you want to maybe draw your feet closer in together, that's an option. You can just heel toe maybe your back foot closer in toward your front foot, shortening your stance if that feels more stable to you. Or maybe you feel like you're kind of jammed up and you want a wider stance, and you can send your back foot further back. So as we come into these shapes, we'll be revisiting this shape again. Just know that those are your options. An option here to inhale, and maybe you reach your arms out into a T. And you can stay here if it feels welcome, maybe even looking out over your left hand or your front hand. Or if you'd like, you might find some movement. So option here to inhale, reach up through the arms, lengthen through your legs. And as you exhale, you might begin to find your way back into warrior two, lunging through your front knee. Arms might be out to a T. Option to continue this movement for 3 more breaths, so 3 more. Or you might decide to leave this shape at any time. And as we take our last breath here, you might even observe the sensation in your muscles, in your leg muscles or your arm muscles. With our last exhale, perhaps taking just a moment of stillness. You might stay here, or you might place your back hand on your back leg and inhale, reach your top arm over, coming into a reverse warrior. Your back hand can be stabilized on your back leg. So you open up. 1 more breath in here. I welcome you to inhale back to center just for a moment, as your front arm can connect to the top of your front leg, or you can use a block and place your hand on your block for an extended side angle, and your back hand can reach over for a really lovely side stretch if you choose to take it. 1 breath here, and an exhale out. Option to place your extended arm on the floor. So now we have both hands on the floor, and you could stabilize yourself and step your front leg back, bringing the knees to the mat and lowering down onto your stomach. Here we will revisit our dancing cobra. So if you'd like, you can plant your hands on the floor. 1 baby cobra to start. Inhaling, if you'd like to join. Opening up through the chest. And an exhale to lower back down. If you'd like, you can stay with baby cobra, or if you'd like to take a dancing cobra, you could tent your fingers out to the left and right side as you're Elbows peel upward. Breathing in on your own timing, you could find some lift and exhale to take your dance or your twist, dropping one shoulder forward and looking over the back shoulder. You choose when you're ready to switch sides, taking the opposite side when you're ready. And I'll meet you back at center. And we'll lower on down. You could press your hands into the mat, lifting yourself up. Option here to step one foot forward and then the other to meet me in a forward fold. Or if you'd like to take a down dog, you could lift your hips, sending them back and lengthening through the shoulders, finding a down dog for just a moment. And then we'll bend the knees if you're here in down dog. And if you're ready to leave, you could step your feet forward. And we can all meet in a forward fold whenever or however you get there. Option to inhale for a halfway lift if you're ready. And then exhale to fold. And an inhale to rise in your own time. Option to bring your hands down to heart center. Okay. And we'll take the other side. So if you stepped your right foot back last time, you might step your left foot back this time, or vice versa. Tuning into your stance, noticing how far apart or close together you'd like to have it. Option 2, lengthen through your arms. Lunging through your front knee for our warrior 2. And you might find stillness here. Perhaps you gaze out over your front hand. Maybe it's your right hand. Or you might decide to find movement, perhaps inhaling and lengthening through your legs and your arms. And an exhale to lunge back into your stance. Maybe you work with your breath. Maybe you continue to move in your own timing. Option for 2 more. Tuning into your legs, maybe even your ribs and your side body, feeling the space that you're creating here. You are a mountain of tiny courages. And the next time you find yourself in a warrior 2, option to take a pause. Maybe you place your left hand or your back hand on your back leg, and breathing in, you can find a reverse warrior if you want to. And as you exhale, you might begin to bring your right hand or your front arm either down onto the top of your quad or onto a block connected to the floor for an extended side angle. Option for 1 breath here. However, you can leave whenever you want. And with your next inhale, you could begin to find your way up and bringing your hands down to the mat. You could step your front foot back and lower down onto your stomach, or you might find a child shape at any time. Option to join me for one last dancing cobra, baby cobra and dancing cobra. If you'd like, you could press your hands into the floor and inhale. Open up through the heart space for our baby cobra. And an exhale to lower it back down in your own timing. Option to revisit baby cobra or tent the hands out to the left and right for a dancing cobra. As we inhale and press up. And as you exhale, you could dip one shoulder forward and look over the back shoulder. Taking your time. Switching sides when you are ready to. And when you feel complete here, I'll meet you back at center. You might draw your hands in, press into your hands and send your hips back. Option to find a child's shape here. Maybe you take your knees a little bit wider, perhaps the toes touch back behind you. As you send the hips back, you might place your forehead on the floor. Maybe your hands are outstretched, or if you prefer to keep your gaze lifted, you could always draw your elbows back like we did at the beginning of class. Keeping your gaze lifted. You choose. As we take 3 breaths here. Can you take this opportunity to acknowledge the courage in your healing? This is not easy. It is not easy. And yet you are here doing it. This takes courage. Can you acknowledge, even if it's just a little bit, that part of yourself that is showing up right now? Last breath. When you're ready, you could stay here longer. If this child's shape is supporting you, nourishing you, please stay as long as you like. And if you'd like to join me for one last flow, I invite you to lift your head, rock yourself forward into a tabletop. I'm going to turn the other way. And stepping one foot forward and then the other. I'll meet you in a forward fold. Then inhale to rise to halfway lift. And an exhale to fold. Connecting with your own internal rhythm. I'll meet you at standing whenever you get there. Option to step your right foot back, or whichever foot you originally started with. Perhaps you find your warrior 2. Option to find movement or stillness. We won't be here as long. Perhaps you even rest your hands on your quads for just 1 or 2 breaths. Feeling the engagement of your legs. Can you follow this engagement down into your feet? Noticing that you are grounded. You are connected here. Breathing in. As you exhale, option to bring your back hand to your back leg and reverse your warrior. Although you can always skip this shape. And with your next breath, perhaps you bring yourself forward into an extended side angle. Your forearm can connect with your front quad or a block. Observing these open ribs on your side. And an inhale to come back to center, back to warrior 2. And release the hands. You could bring your hands down to the mat, and we're just gonna step the back foot forward. So we're gonna come back into a forward fold because that was our last little flow, cobra flow there earlier. So I'll reset with an inhale, halfway lift. And an exhale to fold. And an inhale to rise. When you are ready, there is no rush. And you could step your left foot or your opposite foot back that you did last time. Maybe coming into a warrior two. Perhaps you find stillness. And here again, can you tune into your feet? Can you feel this grounded support? For one last breath. Option to place your left hand or your back hand on your back leg and reverse your warrior. How does this reverse warrior feel compared to the first one you came into? And if you're ready, you could come back to center, perhaps placing your forearm on your front quad, or maybe your front hand on a block for an extended side angle. Reaching through your top arm, your fingertips, feeling this long line of energy that is you. This is your body. Can you feel the strength here? And coming back to center in your own timing, back to warrior two. You could bring your hands to the mat, framing your front foot and stepping your back foot forward. I'll meet you in a forward fold. Our very last forward fold in this session. Inhale. When you're ready for it, take a halfway lift. And an exhale to fold. Taking a pause, if that feels okay, and just noticing, how does this forward fold feel in comparison to the first one at the beginning of class? What feels different in your body? As we take one last inhale and exhale here. And if you're ready, you could bend your knees and slowly come up to standing. Perhaps even bringing your hands down to heart center. If you feel a little lightheaded here, you could keep your eyes open. An option to return back to our mountain shape. So you could plant your feet underneath your hips, or your stance could be any other width. From your grounded feet, your energy can flow upward as you lengthen through the spine, through the chest. Perhaps you even roll the shoulders down the back. The back of your head can lengthen up, almost as if you are slightly tucking your chin, and your ears can float back over your shoulders. You are a mountain of tiny courages. And here I welcome you to take 5 mountain breaths. And as you breathe in through your nose, you can travel the breath down your body, past your lungs, into your hips, down your legs, and into your feet. Rooting your feet to the earth. And as you exhale, your breath can rebound back up and out from the earth through your feet, all the way out of your nose or your mouth. Taking 4 more just like that, imagining, visualizing, inhaling, breath comes through your nose, down your body, down your legs, into your feet, into the earth. Exhale, it rebounds right back out, giving fresh energy, releasing anything that is stagnant. 3 more at your own pace. Taking your time, Last one. Option to release any effort here. Just observing for a moment how you feel. And if you are ready, you could begin to come down onto your mat, lying on your stomach. And here, you could always drape a blanket over your hips and your legs if you want. And we'll take one last shape before we settle into our final time of rest. And here I invite you to allow your right, I'm gonna start on my right side. So if you want, you can extend out your right hand. And maybe it even creates a line from your right shoulder to your right wrist. And your left hand can be planted on the floor, right underneath your left shoulder, give or take. It doesn't have to be exact. And option here to pick up your left foot, and as you breathe in, you could exhale and then start to send your left foot back toward the floor on the right side. Here, you might even rest your forehead on the mat. So I'm gonna do that again because it seems kind of weird at first. So if you found it already, that's okay, you can stay there. But if this is eluding you, which it did me as well when I first learned this shape. So right hand can be extended, left hand is planted on the floor, right on your left side by the left shoulder. Your left heel can kick up, and you can send your left foot over the right leg. And you might even rest your forehead on the floor. So this is a really big chest and shoulder opener here. So notice that you control how much of the stretch that you feel. So if this is really big and maybe is kind of overwhelming to your system at the moment, you can lessen the stretch by maybe lowering your left knee a little bit, lowering, maybe even extending the left leg out on top of your right leg and just kind of reducing the stretch. Your left hand that is connected to the floor kind of is your kickstand, and it controls how much you feel. So you can reduce or you can increase depending on what you need as we take the last 2 breaths here. As we are peeling back the heart space. And that was our final breath here. However, if you want to stay in this shape longer, you can. But if you're ready to switch sides, you could begin to come back down onto your stomach, back to center. And an option to kind of just pause in between. Maybe bringing your arms in front of you, using them as a pillow as we just kind of rest before we rush off to the next side. Observing, how does your right shoulder feel in comparison to your left? Perhaps even the left side of the chest compared to the right side of the chest. And if you're ready for the next side, you could extend your opposite arm. For me, it's my left. And with your right hand, your kickstand planted on the floor, you could pick up your right heel and send the right heel back to over the left leg. And again, you control how much of a sensation you feel here. So if this feels like a lot and you're like, ooh, my body is not ready for that, that's okay. There's no right or wrong here. But you might extend your top leg, in this case it's my right leg, over, just resting it on top of your left, or even to the side of it. And notice how that might change the stretch compared to having your right knee bent and your right foot planted on the floor. That can be a really big stretch if your body isn't ready for that. So you have the freedom, you have the choice to change anything here that does not serve you. You don't have to stay here if this shape is not welcome. You can decide to leave this shape at any time. And I invite you to take 1 to 2 last breaths here. And you can choose to stay here longer if this shape is serving you. And if you'd like to leave, you could straighten your top leg back out and just come to rest on your stomach or on your side, depending on what you prefer. And here I invite you to perhaps explore a prone. So prone is lying on your stomach, time of rest. However, if you prefer any other shape for your time of rest, you can explore that now. Perhaps it's laying on your side or lying on your back, or maybe it's sitting up. Whatever feels safest to you. And I invite you to be here for the next 2 minutes. And I'll keep track of time. And even though I'm going to be quiet now, just know that I'm still here. And I'll let you know when those 2 minutes are complete. Begin to bring some awareness back into your body and where it's connected to your mat. You can choose to stay in this time of rest longer. And I encourage you to, if this is serving you, please stay here as long as you like. However, if you are ready to begin to close out this practice, You could add some movement back into your body. Perhaps even taking a stretch. And then in your own timing, you could meet me in a seated shape. Any shape that is welcome to your body. An option to bring your hands to heart center. And you might even bring to mind the affirmation that we created at the beginning of class. I acknowledge my courage in my healing. And if you'd like, you could take a collective breath with me. You might start by exhaling your air out, and then we'll breathe in together. Thank you for joining me in this class today. I hope that you feel safe, connected, and at home in your body. Thank you.